You jibber jab, bamboozle, nuka noozle, bippity bop, she-call. You jibber jab, bamboozle, nuka noozle, bippity bop, she-call. I mean, you keep on talking, but you don't know where to turn it off.
Welcome to the weekend. I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute. You're watching Independent Thinking. Well, those darn conservatives, you know, the social conservatives, they cause so much trouble. They're so hypocritical. We thought we'd expose a couple of them for you tonight and find out, is there room for social conservatism in politics? From the state legislature, Ted Harvey, so glad to have you here.
Thank you.
How long have you been in the legislature?
Starting my 9th year.
9th year. So how many in the House?
5 in the House and going into my 4th in the Senate.
Yipes.
I know, huh? Scary.
And in your district, I always forget your district.
Northern Douglas County. Live in Highlands Ranch.
Ah, the social conservative haven.
God's country.
God's country. Kevin Miller, who puts together an organization called the National Freedom Initiative. What's that?
National Freedom Initiative I founded a couple of months ago. Its design is to forward the theme, freedom nationally, virtue locally. Freedom nationally, virtue locally.
All right, we'll want to get into that. But let's talk about, people think of the Republican Party as a bunch of social conservative guys, you know, just like you. When in fact,
I wish.
Yeah, but unfortunately, there's a whole bunch of guys like me who are also Republicans, and I'm not a social conservative. But as I've stated many times over, I love social conservatives, particularly when they get into office, because social conservatives don't answer to their constituents. They answer to God, and God hates taxes, and God loves guns, and we're okay. Tell me a little bit about the social conservative movement, and what's the difference in your mind between a social conservative and a fiscal conservative, or are they the same?
Well, I think most social conservatives are fiscal conservatives. I think if you looked at the way social conservatives vote on all tax issues, they are the most conservative on all tax issues. Those that espouse to be just fiscal conservatives
we throw better parties.
Tend to be a little less consistent in their fiscal votes than the.
Let me challenge you on that, because one of the great things that Reagan did, in order to bring a Republican majority to become elected, he really brought in social conservatives into politics, and they really were not as active as they were when Reagan became a popular politician. And he said, come join our crowd because we want to keep government out of your lives. You'll be able to have more tax money. You can raise your kids the way you want. You'll be able to send them to the school you want. You'll have more of your own money to do with what you need with your family. But as of late, I've seen a lot of conservatives who have become compassionate conservatives, including our former President George Bush, who I think was a fiscal train wreck. And he did something I thought we didn't believe in. He put churches on the dole. That is, with faith-based initiatives, now social conservatives were going to politicians for handouts. So I've got a question. Your idea that social conservatives are also always fiscal conservatives.
Well, I will never defend George Bush's efforts when it comes to social services that he expanded. You look at the prescription drugs for senior citizens. That was the largest expansion of the federal government in the history of our world, practically, and that goes against everything that I believe in and that most social fiscal conservatives believe in. I think there is a huge debate going on right now in the Christian conservative movement about what is the appropriate role of government. And unfortunately, you see very powerful members of the church, and mostly the Catholic Church, that are pursuing more of a Christian socialist mentality, that the government is there to provide social welfare for everybody. And they're a strong proponent of the health care bill, which I'm absolutely opposed to.
And they were strong proponents of tax increases here locally. Let me bring it over here. Before we start going into the social conservatives and why maybe they shouldn't be involved in pushing their agenda through politics, give me your bona fides. Convince me you're one of them.
Well, you just have to take my word for it, John. Actually, you know, I'm a social conservative. I believe that the country is great because it is good. We should have virtue in our society. The markets are based upon contracts that people really need to be trustworthy to entertain and fulfill. And that if you do pure libertarianism, it just really doesn't work. It's based upon the rule of law that has stood for years and years, and that the communities are built around those virtues of trustworthiness, of accountability, and that's what really drives this country to greatness.
All right. But still, as you're a Christian,
yes.
I'm assuming.
Yes.
And you've been involved in church for your entire life, I'm assuming?
Since I was 27.
What happened at 27?
I became a Christian at 27.
You were a heathen before then?
I was, just like you.
Oh, man, the parties are good on this side of the street.
But I still love you, man.
Yeah, you have to because you're a Christian.
Of course.
That's the beautiful thing about Christians is you can insult them, you can berate them, and they still have to love you.
Absolutely right.
This whole turn the other cheek thing is wonderful. All right, so talk to me about politics, though, because I think a lot of mainstream voters look at social conservatives and go, I don't want them pushing their agenda through government. I don't want them saying we've got to have prayer in school or putting up the 10 Commandments or doing some of these other things. Give me your short version of what it is you mean to keep virtue on the local level.
Thank you. Well, really what I want to do is say that there's a separation between criminal activity, crimes against persons and property, and virtue activity. And that the state has very much an interest. We all have a common interest in crimes against persons and property. And that's historically been true and always will be true. On the virtue side, it's frankly, from my perspective, biblical, and from a social conservative, you don't really create virtue by creating a law. In fact, the history of whenever you've tried to create virtue, prohibition is a great example. It didn't create virtue. In fact, it created an underground, people trying to deliver alcoholic beverages, and in fact they repealed it. It obviously was unsuccessful. I think that's the history of virtue activity at a national level, and quite frankly, I don't think A, it doesn't work, and number two, it's really not what the Constitution was provided for. I think when the founders designed the Constitution, they set up the accountability to the states, and the national government was simply to do the things they were supposed to do, and the virtues were left to the people. Secondly, I believe that as Christians have really become involved in virtue politics at the national level, they haven't been very successful over the years, and they've opened up for liberal and progressive virtues. And what has happened, in my particular view, the last 30 or 40 years, is that the liberals and progressives put their virtues into place, like don't eat fatty foods, you can't have incandescent light bulbs here in another couple of years. Those are progressive virtues, and the Christian virtues haven't been succeeding, so we've opened up this whole idea of national politics being virtue-based.
Let me see if I understand what you're saying. Saying that social conservatives have tried to push social agendas through law with very limited success, and now the left is saying, wait a second, we can push our virtues about what you can say, virtues of what you can do as far as environmental issues, what kind of light bulbs you can use, and their virtues are being successful. Let's bring it over here. What kind of social conservative agendas have social conservatives been trying to push? I mean, for instance,
that's my whole question. Is I would say Kevin and I probably agree on this more than we disagree. It's a definition of what Kevin discerns as being a virtue. I think all laws are based on a moral principle. All laws are based on Mosaic law that thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not cheat, thou shalt not murder. You go down all of the laws that are passed, whether it's corporate law, whether it's trade law, whether it's, all of them have to do with that basic theme, steal, cheat, and things like that. And those are virtues. That's a virtuous, we have a virtuous standard that we will set, and that's why we have a government, to have a civilized society, to saying these are the virtuous standards that we will set as a society, to say you cannot break these laws. I think that is wholly appropriate to do that. And so I'm not exactly sure where Kevin's coming from, where he says that we as a society at the federal level should not deal with virtuous issues. I think all of the issues are virtuous issues.
Give me one example of something on the social conservative political agenda that you think they shouldn't be pushing.